Hopefully the music behind my voice right now is familiar. It's Tilberg by Sam Aaron, the piece we looked at right at the start of the course when we were first talking about SonicPi. And we've reached a really exciting milestone that we probably know enough stuff about how SonicPi works to have a good understanding of what's going on here in this composition, which is a really great point to have reached. So I thought in this lesson we just have a bit of a dig into Sam's composition here, which I've slightly modified just to make it a little bit easier to understand and follow. If you go and look at the original, you can find that in the help section under the examples tab, and so if you want to really see how Sam wrote the program, you can look at it there. Here I've just made a few modifications to make it clearer as to what's going on, and it is really clear to see how this composition is constructed. Essentially, it's made from 4 different live loops that are all running at the same time. So we have 4 threads of this composition all happening at once. And a really good way to explore what's going on in the composition is to look at each of the loops in turn and figure out what's going on, listen to how they sound, and then we can put all of the ingredients back together into the mix to hear how the finished product sounds. And so what I'm doing here is just commenting out the other lines of the program. So what's going on in this first live loop, the low live loop? Well, simple things that we've talked about before, really. We've selected which synth we want to use. We're using this Zawa, which is a saw synth, one of the ones that comes with SonicPi, and we're just asking it to play a note of E, a pretty low E, E in an octave way, way, way down towards the bottom of the keyboard. And if we have a listen to that, we'll hear that it has a particular character to the sound, and that's being set with these parameters. If these look unfamiliar, it'd be worth having a quick look in the help section. It will tell you what's going on. A big part of this sound is that we have a kind of phaser effect going on. That's what gives this kind of what sound, though it's sort of coming and going all of the time. And then just by adding sleep 4 at the end, we're telling SonicPi that we want to hear that drone note playing once every 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our live loop. It's a really simple kind of foundation to the composition. Let's see what goes on top of that. What's going on in this second loop, the lands loop? Well, quite a few things, but if we break it down into its various components, we should be able to get an idea of what's going on. Let's first have a listen to what that sounds like. That's a very modern sounding, futuristic combination of notes, but it is in a pattern. It seems to be repeating every now and again. We get the same pattern of notes coming out of this loop. So what's going on here? Well, the first thing we can see is that we've contained all of the instructions in this loop in a with effects block, which means that we're going to be playing everything here with some reverb, and Sam has set some of the parameters of the reverb. You could look up what these things do in the help section, and that means that it gives us this kind of bloom to the sound. It's just a bit of a fuller, more sort of reverberant sound. Particularly when I stop the sound, you'll hear it carrying on as if it was in a really big room. You hear it just took a while just for the sound to kind of disappear, and so that's being added by this with effects reverb instruction here at the top. Then we've just chosen a different synth to use. This is the D-saw synth, and we've set a random seed which will just define what order notes come out if we choose to use later on some kind of random element, and it turns out that that's what's going on in this particular loop. We've got a ring coming next. So Sam has decided to set NS, which is just a label, a value in this loop, as a ring, and he's chosen a scale, a minor pentatonic scale for 3 octaves starting from E2. And so whenever we refer to that, we can refer back to NS instead of having to write scale E2 minor pentatonic num octaves 3 all the time, and that's helpful. We see that in the next part. And this is where the actual business of the loop is going on. We're playing something in this loop. We've got a 16 times do, so we're going to run these commands 16 times, and we're asking SonicPi to play something from this ring. So we've gone ns.choose, and we've set a load of parameters there so that it has its particular character, and there is a really nice character to this sound, I think. and that's been achieved through this particular set of parameters, and then we've chosen to sleep. And altogether this loop should take 2 beats to play, because we are playing this note and then we're resting for 0.125 beats 16 times, and if we times 0.125 by 16 we get 2. So we're going to get 2 of the lands loop for every one of the low loop. If we put them together, we'll see that they line up perfectly and we can hear them playing at the same time. They sort of locked into one another. What's really interesting is that if we just comment that out again, what we can do is change the random seed and we get a completely different combination of notes, because the choose function is referring back again to these random numbers that SonicPi can generate. Let's try use random seed 666, see if that sounds more evil and sinister possibly. Let's have a go at that. I quite like that actually. There you go, Sam. An idea for another composition maybe involves random seed 666 somewhere. And the nice thing, of course, is because these are live loops, we can change that number at any point during our performance of this piece, which means that we have a huge amount of control over how the music's going to sound. Okay, so that takes care of that ingredient. That's our lands loop. Let's have a look at the next one. The next part of the composition is really simple. This is our fiesta loop, and it's just playing a sample back to us, playing our guitar E minor 9 sample backwards, because we've set a parameter of -1. Let's have a listen to that. So it takes a bit of time to come in because it's coming backwards. That's really effective. Let's just have a quick listen to it forwards, just to hear the difference. So that's what it sounds like forwards. It's kind of atmospheric even then, but if we changed our rate to -1, I think it's even more atmospheric, as it kind of comes in from nothing, because we're hearing it backwards. We're hearing the sound of the actual sample fading away, turning into a very, very slow fade in. So here it comes very slowly from nothing. And so we hear that running underneath the other 2 ingredients that we had, and this happens less often than anything that's going on here, because you'll see that we sleep for quite a long time before we get that happening in the music. We get this sort of once every 8 beats, essentially. So this is running over the course of 8 beats. That's the end of that loop. And finally, we have our very simple final element. This is the tidge loop that's going on right at the end of our composition, and it is an incredibly important part of the composition, even though it's just 4 lines at the end. This is providing us with our beat, and no piece of dance music or electronic music would be complete without a thumping bass drum going on underneath everything else. And so this is just a bass drum that's playing pretty loud. You'll see that Sam has decided to set this as an amplitude of 2.5, which is much more than we'd normally have it. If we got rid of that, it would sound significantly less beefy. See, it's just sort of disappeared a little bit into the background there when I've turned it back to the default of 1. This kind of really pushes the bass drum sound to the front of the music. So there we go, we've had a look at each of the 4 loops that are going on in this composition, and there's nothing to stop us putting them all together now and having a play. And I would say this is what you should do as soon as you finish watching this video. Go away, find this composition. It's available in the help section. It's called Tilberg. You just have to scroll down to the bottom and it'll be there. There's a couple of things that are different to what we've got here, and it actually makes the composition a lot more interesting. I've simplified it slightly just to make things easier to explain, but with all of these lines uncommented, I can go away now and I can create an evolving composition using this idea, this Tilburg piece, as the starting point. But as I start to change some features, change some factors in the composition, we can start to evolve that and make it sound very different over time. So I'm going to have a go at that now, and I think you should do the same thing as well.